make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door.
Hi everyone, I am here with Jeff Deskovic, who you were wrongfully imprisoned for 16 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you kind of tell the story of how that happened, and how you were so determined to get free, and how you were able to have that happen?
So the year was 1990. It was in the city of Peekskill, which is a city in Westchester County, so it's the suburbs in New York. The year was 1990. It was an ethnically diverse middle-class city. And a classmate that I barely knew, who was in two of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore, she went missing, and her body turned up a couple of days later. She had been found murdered and raped. I got on the police radar because in high school I was quiet to myself. I didn't really fit in. And when the police interviewed a lot of students from the high school, some of them told the police they might want to speak with me. So that's how I got on their radar. An additional factor is I was a sensitive teenager. This was my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction. And the cops thought that, given that I barely knew the victim, that was suspicious. And they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which claimed to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator. And so I had the misfortune of matching that. So for about 6 weeks, they played a cat and mouse game with me, in which half the time they would talk to me like a suspect, and when they pushed too hard and I would become frightened and want to get away from them, they would switch it up, and Jeff as this junior detective helper theme was developed. Prior to being a teenager, the career I dreamed about having when I grew up was to be a cop. So that was how they pulled the wool over my eyes. And they would say things like, the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They'd ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinion was correct. Came from a single parent household. My father was never involved in my life in any way, and that intersected with the good cop, bad cop technique. I began to look up to the officer who was pretending to be my friend as a father figure. Eventually, they got me to agree to take a lie detector test. They said, look, we got some new information in the file. We want to share that with you. That'll allow you to be more helpful to us. You need to first take and pass a polygraph. So the next day, rather than report to school, I went to the rather than report to the high school, I went to the police station. My mother and grandmother thought I was in school, so they didn't call around looking for me. And they drove me 40 minutes away by car from Peekskill, which is in Westchester. They drove me to the town of Brewster, which is in Putnam County. So that meant I wasn't able to leave on my own anymore. I was totally dependent upon the police. I didn't have an attorney present. They didn't give me anything to eat. I didn't understand the 4-page brochure that they gave me, which explained how the polygraph worked, because it had a lot of big words in it. But then I figured, well, I'm there to help the police, so what does it matter?
Yeah, what could go wrong, right?
Right. Let's just get on with it. From there, they put me in a small room, and he gave me countless cups of coffee to get me nervous. Then he attached the machine to me. Then he launched his third-degree tactics, and he got in my face. He raised his voice at me. He asked me the same questions over and over again, and he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. Towards the end, he said, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test result that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." That really shot my fear through the roof. And at that point, the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and he said, "Look, they're going to harm you. I've been holding them off. I can't do this any longer. You have to help yourself. Look, just tell them what they want to hear. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested." So being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about the long term. I was just concerned with my safety in the moment. I was in fear of my life because the fact that I didn't know where I was and that no one else knew where I was either loomed rather large in my mind. Then there was this push-pull dynamic, the possibility of harm, then this false life preserver that he threw me. So I took the out which he offered, and I made up a story based on the information which he gave me in the course of the interrogation and the 6 weeks run up to it. By the time it was all said and done, I collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. Obviously, I was arrested. I was charged with the murder and rape. The Interrogation was not videotaped. It was not audio taped. There was no signed confession. It was just the cop's word for it. They left the threat and false promise out of their story when we came to court. And I got wrongfully convicted based on that false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, because he claimed that he found medical evidence to show that the victim had been sleeping around, and that was how the prosecution answered the DNA test that didn't match me. And my public defender essentially didn't defend me, and so I got convicted, and I was given a 15 to life sentence, and I spent 16 years in prison. I lost 7 appeals, got turned down for parole, ultimately was exonerated through further DNA testing through the data bank, which identified the actual perpetrator, whose DNA was in that data bank because he killed a second victim 3.5 years later after killing the victim in my case.
And you were how old when this happened?
I was 16 when I got arrested. I turned 17 before the trial started, and then I lost the trial at 17. So I was in prison from age 17 to 32.
And how do you, as a child, for the next 16 years, knowing that you're there and you're not supposed to be, how do you stay sane, coherent through that entire thing, knowing that you're not supposed to be there?
Well, belief in God was one thing. Second thing, I didn't focus in on like I'm doing a 15 to life sentence. I thought, look, I just have to hold on for a year or two to the next appeal would happen, which I was sure I was going to win because I was innocent and I believed in the system. I used to go to the law library to study the law, and that gave a sense of empowerment. I would collect articles about other people who were exonerated, and I used that as motivation to keep going. And I would also study who helped them and what route did they take. I'd engaged in elaborate delusion when I would play basketball or chess or ping pong. I would pretend like I was a professional player, and so were the other people. But it really wasn't like kids fooling around on a playground. It was that my mind created that because I had to get out of the prison for a few hours. There was another prisoner there named Frank Sterling who was also innocent, and we used to get together once every 6 weeks. And half the time would be about how do we keep going morale-wise, and secondly, what's the next tactic. By the way, I want to share that Frank was exonerated by DNA testing a couple of years after I was. He did 18 years, so it wasn't that I was naively believing that he was there wrongfully just because I happened to be. Lastly, a pen pal, I placed an ad in the newspaper, and a pen pal showed up kind of in the nick of time. And I was asking the strangers I didn't know from anywhere during my last year of imprisonment, do you think I should give up? Do you think I should just commit suicide? I'm never going to get out of here. So he kept me going. So that's kind of a good segue to this next thing. I had to, it wasn't just the absence of my freedom. Okay, I had to keep fighting off feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, thoughts of giving up, suicidal ideation. But I knew that nobody was coming to my rescue. So I was going to have to recruit somebody that I didn't know already and hope that they could help build the bridge between me and the legal help that I need. And so to do that, I had no choice but to hold it together.
What was that like the day you were released? I mean, so much had changed over the 16 years for you and for the world. Like, what was that like to re-enter the world again?
It was surreal. I mean, my first words at this unexpected press conference were, "Is this really happening?" Because I thought I finally did it. I finally managed to lose my mind, and I was in this delusion. I was going to wake back up and be in the prison. But you're right. So much had changed. So technology was different. So internet, cell phones, GPS hadn't been created. Culture was different. Cities and towns looked different. Collectively, it felt like I was in a parallel world, one that I didn't belong. I remember when my lawyer handed me his cell phone. He wanted me to speak to a member of the media that had not been able to attend the press conference. And I remember when I got the phone from him, I asked him, where are the holes in the phone that I'm supposed to talk into? But in addition to that, it was awkward when I'd meet up with members of my extended family because the overwhelming majority of them never came to see me. And the few that did, it was few and far visits in between. Often there was spaces of 3 or 4 years. Then I had to deal with the psychological after effects. So I went to a mental health professional like 4 times a week for like 6 years. There was the stigmatic aspect of it. So you'd been in prison wrongfully for 16 years. Yes, but you've been there for 16 years. So how much of that rubbed off on you? Is it safe to be alone someplace with you? I was always passed over for gainful employment. At one point, I was a couple of weeks away from a homeless shelter. Mercy College, which gave me a scholarship to finish the bachelor's degree, which I had gotten GED, associates in a year towards the bachelor's while wrongfully imprisoned. They gave me a scholarship to finish it. They allowed me to live on campus. They gave me the meal plan. So shout out to them. I likely would have been in a homeless shelter. But it was a big
Gosh.
transition. I want to quickly mention it was
Yeah.
particularly challenging for me because the years that I was in prison from 17 to 32, not similar at all. Like if this would have happened to me at age 30. So I was in prison from 30 to 46. I mean, I instead had never had a driver's license. I never had lived alone. I never went shopping. I never wrote a check.
Yeah.
I never balanced a budget. So I had to deal with all of those things. It was a lot.
I bet. And I mean, there are obviously advances to DNA testing and stuff now, but how often does this happen?
Yeah, more often than what most of us think. I mean,
Mhm.
per the National Registry of Exonerations, from 1991 to now, um, there's been there's been more than 3,500 exonerations,
Wow.
and that's just the people that have made it out. You can't count the wrongful convictions. You can only count the people that have been exonerated. So it feels like there's a couple of people being exonerated in this country a couple of times a week.
Mm. And tell everybody about the Jeff Deskovic Foundation for Justice.
So while I was having all those difficulties transitioning that we covered already, I was simultaneously doing advocacy work. I was speaking. I became a weekly columnist. I was treating privacy for awareness by doing media and ultimately new media interviews. And I was regularly meeting with elected officials. Didn't get into law school, decided to pick up a master's degree in criminal justice, my thesis on wrongful conviction cause and reform. I thought that'd make me a better advocate. After 5 years, I got financially compensated, so I used some of the money to start the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, a 501(c)(3) organization whose mission would be to continue the work I did as an individual, just from a nonprofit perspective. So to date, we have freed 14 people. We've helped pass 3 laws and another 6 as key members of the National Coalition Group. It could happen to you. And at some point, I became not satisfied with sitting in the front row of the courtroom. I wanted to sit at the defense table. I wanted to represent some of the clients. I wanted to make some of the arguments. So hence going to law school, becoming an attorney. And so my life is devoted to this. I have an inner peace. I'm not angry. I want to enjoy my life. I can't do that and be angry. And I take that energy and I channel it into the advocacy work that I do.
Yeah, I was going to say it has to feel so amazing to now be able to do what you're doing and very healing, I imagine.
It's extremely healing. It's cathartic. It makes my suffering count for something, and I have a purpose. And with that purpose, I have an inner peace. And beyond doing this difference speaking work, I love working with coalitions and other advocates. I serve on the Global Advisory Council for Restorative Justice International, advising them on wrongful conviction issues and criminal justice issues as well. So I've met so many wonderful, dedicated people as advocates, and it's so great to go from visiting someone in prison, taking a call from them, to seeing them on the street, getting a phone call, seeing someone's name pop across the screen that used to be in prison, or passing a law aimed at preventing what happened to me from happening to others. I mean, and it's a reinforcement that I've chosen the right path, because there's nothing easy about passing a law. There's nothing easy about freeing somebody. So it's wonderful when you do get those victories.
Are you still like pinching yourself sometimes when you wake up? Like, I can't believe this is still my life and I get to do what I'm now able to do.
I am. I am.
Yeah.
I've met people that I don't think I ever would have met. So before she passed away, I met Janet Reno. I was served cookies and coffee in Ramsey Clark's living room.
Wow.
I've met a few celebrities, and I've made a visit before to the Eisenhower office building, which of course is connected to the White House. I've met with tons of elected officials, both in New York and also Pennsylvania and California, where the foundation is active in policy work. Want to quickly mention, in Pennsylvania, our policy objective there is we're working on passing exonerated compensation. So it's one of 12 states that does not currently compensate people. So if what had happened to me happened in Pennsylvania, I would not have been paid anything from the government. And that financial compensation, while no amount of money is worth being wrongfully imprisoned for, at the same time, compensation is a very important tool in trying to rebuild your life.
Yeah. How can people connect with you, support the foundation?
Sure. So our website, www.deskovic.org, just deskovic.org. There is a web form there that they can email me through. I answer. We're on social media, on Instagram, Deskovic Foundation, on Facebook, Jeffrey Deskovic. I have my personal page, which is open to the public. I have a public figure page. The foundation has a page there too. So they can get me through there. And in terms of how they can help out, I do have a dream of one day having an office in each state and ultimately each country, because I look at wrongful conviction as a worldwide problem. In countries where we don't hear about wrongful conviction, it's not because the injustices aren't occurring, it's that nobody is being exonerated. So I do have our crowdfunding page on the Patreon website. Google Deskovic Patreon, Patreon. I'm looking for 25,000 people that are willing to sacrifice $3 to $5 a month on a recurring monthly basis in order to help me to free innocent people. We'd be able to get additional attorneys, paralegals, investigators, so we could work on more cases than what we currently do. If you're out there and you have a podcast, or if you have a Blog Talk Radio, if you write a blog, if you're a member of traditional media, please consider, if you're a person of capacity, we do need financial support to increase our capacity. If you know people that are, put us on their radar. If you work in a corporation that does corporate philanthropy, just give us a mention. My biggest challenge is I kind of went from worst to first socioeconomic status wise artificially through means of the lawsuit. So I didn't make it in business 10, 20, 30, 40 years of people that made it with me that I can now turn to and ask them to support the charitable endeavor. So that means I need third parties that could introduce me to people of capacity, people who can help me of one way or another. So again, please contact me, connect me. 6 degrees of separation. If we all do a little, we can accomplish a lot.
I love it. And we'll put all of his links in the show notes and in the comments so you can easily find him. Jeff, thank you so much for being here. We'll be right back after this.
In this world of innovation, would you rather have an old, outdated flip phone or a brand new iPhone? A horse and buggy carriage or the newest luxury hybrid? A dial-up router with your AOL account or a super fast Wi-Fi hotspot? With nutrition, what you have been using or taking up until now hasn't been bad. There's just something newer. We all appreciate advancements in science and technology. In the same way we seek the best and newest in our electronics, vehicles, and everyday conveniences, wouldn't you also want the best technology and newest innovation for your nutrition and supplementation? At the time, you may have had the best from what was out there and available. Now, there is something better and newer, more bioavailable, more convenient, better tasting, faster acting. It literally is the equivalent to getting an IV full of high-tech nutrients right into your bloodstream, without the needle, without the appointment, without being attached to anything for a specific length of time. Simply pop these tasty, all-natural lozenges into your mouth and savor as they instantly start to absorb into your bloodstream through your mucous membranes. That's it. And with the added benefit of negative ions, in other words, energy, there isn't anything else out there on the market like it. Now is the time to switch to the next improvement and innovation in health and nutrition. It's time for advancement. It's time for better. It's time for APL Go and our rapid botanical DNA drops.
Well, hello. Apparently there was no sound. We almost got through a week without any big problems. So welcome back. This is what happens when you're live. Anyway, so the guy on the commercial, Kevin, who introduced me to those products on the commercial, is going to be on the show next Wednesday. So if you have any questions about these, make sure you send them in, and we will talk to him live on the show next week. What else? If you want to be on the show or would like to advertise on the show, make sure you go to that email right there on your screen, makeyourdayricher@gmail.com, and let us know how you'd like to be on the show. So if you're a business or you've got something to promote and you want to be in that commercial spot, let us know. If you'd like to just sponsor the show because you love the show, you're a fan of the show, go to buymeacoffee.com/makeyourdayricher. You can do it that way. You'll get your name in the credits, like you'll see in a minute. All the people that have supported this show so graciously, and I appreciate every one of you. What else do we have today? This afternoon, we're recording more episodes of the Wolf Media Festival podcast, which premieres on August 14th. We're in the month of that premiere of that podcast. I'm very excited for you all to hear about some more award-winning authors, filmmakers. There's music. There's every kind of literature, any kind of art. Podcasting is going to be on that podcast. And you, if you are a creative person, go and listen and submit your work. And it's going to be a really good podcast. We're going to have Kyle, my co-host, on the show on the 14th to celebrate the premiere of that. So stay tuned. Our Rosie moment of the day is her book from 1997, Kids Are Punny. It was jokes sent into the Rosie O'Donnell Show by kids. And every day I remember she would watch. I don't think I sent any in myself because I was probably too old. But every day she would end the show by telling jokes. And then they put them in a book and all the money went to charity. I don't think it's in. I'm assuming it's not in print anymore, but some really cute illustrations in here. And check it out on eBay if you have kids. It's a really cute book, and all the money went to charity, of course, back then. All right, that's it. On Monday, we've got a really good show with Jill Nadler. She is a storyologist, and she has, go to her website, pageturneradventures.com. She actually works for a PBS in Florida, I do believe. With kids programming there, and has created her own universe for children and their adults, is what she says. And I love that. And so if you have young children, go to her website, Page Turner Adventures, and start looking her up. She's got a great program that starts at the beginning of August. And it is the beginning of August. So she'll be on talking about that. Have a great weekend, everyone. Go make your day richer and make someone else's day richer. I love you, and I will see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Bye.